Well, I've been looking forward to this for, a year and a half since we did it last time. I'm so glad you decided to come back. Thank you for accepting our invitation. Crystal Brown is with us today, and I'm going to tell you hands down, one of my favorite people, one of the leaders that I truly admire, and I mean that sincerely. And I love doing a podcast with you because you have such wisdom. And so welcome. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Larry. I appreciate the invitation. I didn't know that you would invite me back, but I certainly appreciate that. So
I'm so glad that you chose to come in. As we talked about in the intro, your awards and accolades are just too many to name almost. But you have really grown in the last year and a half. You've taken a new position. So tell us a little bit about your new position and what you're doing.
So I would start by saying God has an amazing way of stretching you. Because when I went to the chamber in 2012, I was called to work on business development after spending 18 years at the Decatur Daily in advertising. And it was perfect because I had wonderful connections. I knew Decatur, Morgan County, and I knew the areas we needed to grow in.
Right.
And so I thought that business and residential development, that was going to be it for me, and I was going to enjoy probably not managing people and or leading people, I should say,
right.
because that's what we really want to be doing, and just enjoying working in my individual corner. No, that's not how it worked out. So
what happened? You started there.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy that aspect like you thought you would?
Very much so. Very much so. Built amazing relationships that I didn't have. Really grew those. Having been on the chamber board from 1999 to 2004, had already developed a lot of good relationships. But
right.
I tell everyone that's the secret in our sauce here in Decatur, Morgan County, that we work so well together. So we just continue to grow those and build a better Decatur. And so, I thought that's what I would be doing until John Seymour decided that he would retire. And I knew then, I was sure that I was going to be stretched fairly soon. So
when you heard that he was retiring, did it just occur to you all at once, or was this a progression into this position? Help us to know, how do you get from this developer position, business developer, to CEO and president of the company?
Well, a few years earlier, I had been named vice president, and as vice president, took the leadership on several different projects, and really took time to really start learning more about the different programming that we provide at the chamber beyond what I was doing, and because I could sense that something else bigger was coming.
Right.
If you listen to God, that happens, right?
Exactly.
So I could see that happening, and just continue to grow myself and just become more involved. And I'll stop right now and tell you that part of that growth came when our dear friend, Representative Terry Collins, called me and asked me about a new board service position that I knew nothing about, and it was the Alabama Community College System Board of Trustees. New board. The community college system was coming out from under the K through 12 board, and I had no idea, first of all, that it would be somewhat controversial, and I also didn't know that because I would be serving in District 5, I would also be responsible for being on the board for the Athens State University. But I can tell you, the first year was definitely like drinking from a fire hose, but I had the opportunity to see the impact that the community college system and the transition to Athens State has on so many lives. People that are not able to afford college,
right.
Our four-year institutions. I saw lives change. I heard incredible stories. So I'll just stop and say that the service, that 6 years of service, was so impactful and was preparing me for where I am today. So,
are you still on the board, or has your term ended?
My term ended last year, and as it would be, John announced his retirement shortly after I rolled off the board. We were seated for 2 years, appointed by the governor for 2 years. They staggered our terms, and then I was reappointed for 4 years, and then we had term limits and rolled off after those 6 years. So.
And in that time, those 6 years, what I heard you say is you learned a lot, but at the same time, you really realized the importance of those institutions to help people.
That's right.
So your heart for service really, I guess, was fulfilled in your ability to go and provide leadership in an area that is so needed, especially in our area.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Crystal, you said that, you begin to just intuitively and listen to God, and you can hear, but you knew that He was preparing you for something else. Mm-hmm. And then you said, I began to grow in some areas. How did you grow yourself? Because I think that's important for leaders, for us to learn. How do we grow internally? What did you do to grow?
Well, one thing I did is, make sure that I was surrounded by people that were brilliant, not afraid to be in a room with others that were, I felt, a lot smarter than myself, because you can learn so much. You can't be intimidated. And sometimes it is intimidating, but you have to pull up your seat at the table and, just begin to glean that information. And, I learned that, while other people that I was learning from, also, they were learning from me. We all have value. We all bring different, our different interests, our different, things that we've learned along the way to the table, and in different perspectives. And that is so important as a leader, and not being afraid to share those perspectives.
Oh, that's awesome.
So
you had to allow yourself, what was it like, Crystal, when you said, okay, I'm preparing myself, I'm a VP, I'm on this board, but you said you can't be intimidated. Mm-hmm. How does that work? How do you not, help me, how did you not be intimidated when you started surrounding yourself with people maybe at a different level of leadership?
Well, that comes from, my childhood and the way I was raised by my parents. A lot of first, and not being afraid to be first. That's important, and I think we have to instill that in our children. I work hard to instill that in my own, dare to be different, and not afraid to walk into a room that, everyone doesn't look just like you. Sometimes no one looks like you, but you have a calling on your life to do things that are important, and you have value. So when you walk into a room and no one looks like you, instead of allowing fear to drive your behavior, what I just heard you say was it's about something bigger than yourself. That's right.
Is that right?
That's right.
So you have this calling, this responsibility to not be afraid to be the first, even if it has to be fearful. But you're saying it's really not about you when you walk in those rooms.
That's right. That's right. I don't have a spirit of fear, right?
That's beautiful. That's right.
And I stop at the door. Oftentimes I have to pause at the door before I walk in and say, God did not give me a spirit of fear.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. You don't have a spirit of fear because you allow God to give you His strength.
That's right.
And your very present help.
That's right.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you have, this is not just talk. You've experienced this.
Oh yes. Oh yes. You oftentimes you'll sit at a table and people will talk around you and above you until you share information that's needed. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, she does have something to share. And that can be a little bit disconcerting, but you learn to, just wait patiently and until it's your turn to speak, and when you do, make sure you have something to say. So, yeah.
When you speak, make sure you have something to say.
Yes.
I love that. I was speaking with, she was on our podcast, Dr. Yvette Rice.
My dear friend, yes.
And she taught me, she said, Larry, sometimes when I go into a meeting, she said, it's how I sit. She said, I have to claim my space.
That's right.
And she said, so when you go in a meeting, your nonverbal behavior is just as important
Absolutely.
as your verbal behavior. Then when you do speak, I love what you said, make sure you have something to say.
That's right.
Do you find that important though? How your presence? Do you find that have you grown in the executive presence kind of thing, or is that? Tell me how you've developed in that area.
I think I have. It's not that you don't get intimidated. It's that you have to be very intentional about knowing where you're going. As I told you, I'm that camel that you talk about. Don't like surprises. So, I want to know who it is I'm meeting with and, a little bit about their background. And with social media, LinkedIn and things of that nature, you kind of know who's in the room, oftentimes that you're meeting with. After you get to know people, they get to know you. It's less intimidating, obviously. But it's important that you prepare before you go into a room, and then you can be confident.
See, look at that. Yeah. And so a key to being confident is not just going in and saying, I'm going to be confident. It's you prepare. You do your homework.
Correct.
You do the work it takes to be prepared.
Yes.
Then that builds the confidence. And then you go in with intentionality. Huh?
That's right.
I think we miss that step sometime, Crystal.
Yes.
Isn't it important to prepare? Is preparation an important part of your leadership?
Very much so. Very much so. Even staff meetings, I take time and prepare for those. I don't take those for granted because I don't want to, I'm respectful of the staff's time. I think it's important. And, I want to honor their time. I want them to know that I honor that time. So I think that's important. Preparation is important, very important.
So now serving as a CEO and president, what is it that you try to, the culture that you try to instill and lead in your team, specifically your leadership team when they come around? Help me to understand what culture are you, and it's an ongoing fluid thing, I realize that, but tell me about what you want to instill in your leadership team.
Well, I want to make sure, first of all, that they know how important they are and that we can't perform at our highest level if they're not feeling good, if they're not confident, if they don't know that I'm there to support them and that we're a team. That's important. And I continue to make sure that I help build them up, offer them the opportunities for professional development. Whatever their needs are, we've got to meet those needs first, and before they can go out and perform at the highest level.
As you consider, and part of your role as an executive, as a CEO, is to look at who is sitting in what seat. As you look for people to be a part of that leadership, what are you looking for your team? For people this team we're talking about, there's certain things that I know that you value or that you want to have in your leadership. Not that everybody has all the things, but if you're looking for somebody to come in and sit, what are you looking for?
Someone that's willing to work, first and foremost.
Right.
Because for some reason, that's a lost art.
Isn't it? Oh, yes, it is.
Holy cow. But someone who's willing to work, who is willing to work with a team. We are a team of all women. That's not by design. It's just the way it has worked out. And I've had people say to me, oh, that must be difficult. It is not, because everyone steps up and they pull their weight. And then when, say if I'm not quite as busy as the next person, I jump in. I'm not asked to jump in. I do it, and that's the way we work. And so I'm looking for that person. Yes, we have a mix of personalities, which is a beautiful thing.
Yes.
We're not all the same. But as a team, we work well together, and everyone knows that the next person has got my back, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to help make you successful.
So talk to us about this team of women, which is amazing, and congratulations for that. That's brilliant. But whether women or men or whatever, there are times when hard conversations have to be made, right?
That's true.
Have to be had. You have to have these difficult conversations.
Right.
What have you learned about doing that, and how do you do that now? How do you have those difficult conversations?
I'm glad you asked me that, because I just had one not too long ago. And what I've learned over the years, and this came with wisdom, is to not have those conversations right away. Take a day if you need to, step back. Obviously, I pray, and then come back and sit down calmly, taking emotion out of it.
That's good.
And just speaking directly about whatever the issue is. That's important, and I think people respect that. All the while, I'm making sure that they understand that it's about making our team the best that it can be, making sure we present the best we can. It is not personal. It is all about us being the very best we can be. So
you made a statement one time that says, and I've used it since you taught it to me, and I just love it. To be unclear is to be unkind.
Oh, yes.
So how important is it to create that clarity, and how do you do that when you're having these conversations, or any conversation, I guess?
Well, you just have to meet whatever it is head on. You can't sweep it under the rug. You can't wait days and days and days and let things fester. You do have to be direct. Be kind, but again, to be unclear is to be unkind, because I think people don't really understand where you are with the situation. Sometimes people think things are okay that aren't okay.
Right.
So
I find in communication, and it's what we're supposed to be helping leaders to do, right? It's to improve. But I think that lack of clarity is the number one issue.
That's right.
I may think we're headed in this direction, and you may think we're headed in the other direction. Right. And bringing that clarity is so important. Is that something that you engage your leadership team with an expectation of that? Or, I mean, you've done a beautiful job of talking about how you have these difficult conversations. What are your expectations from those that you lead?
Well, excellence. Excellence. Day one, I shared that with the team. We want to do every single thing we do with excellence. If we need to step back and say, we need to, maybe decide to do less of or more of or not so much of this or that, so that we can do everything we do with excellence. That's important.
So you just said so brilliantly, if we do too many things, it's better to do a few things with excellence.
That's right.
Than a lot of things with mediocrity.
That's right.
Have I got that?
That's it.
So Crystal, how do you do that? Because I know you're like me. I mean, we can be. I can just. It's so hard to say no, because I can see the need just as clear. I can see a need, and so that seeing the need and then having to say no to that need.
Right.
For leaders, who are like us and who are driven to love people and care for people, that's hard, isn't it?
It is hard. It is hard. And so for me personally, when I'm asked to do multiple things, and I know that I can't perform at my peak level, I will tell people, I can't do that with excellence right now.
That's so good.
Please don't forget about me. But right now, I know that I can't do that with excellence and give you my best. So
I can't do that with excellence right now. I'm going to say I can't do that with excellence right now. I'm learning. I'm going to practice it.
Yeah, it works, and people respect that. I mean,
don't they?
Yeah, it's not a no. It's not. I mean, they understand where you're coming from, and I think people know that about me. I hope they do.
Oh, I know they do. You're just so well respected in so many areas. But it hasn't always been easy for you. Would you share with us an obstacle? Share with us a challenge that you've had to face, maybe you're still going through, or that you've overcome to get to where you are today.
So I was at a women's conference in the Shoals a few weeks ago, and I heard some very accomplished women, from various walks of life, and they talked about something that we all face, and it's called the Imposter Syndrome. And it's a very real thing. It goes back to being confident, walking in that room. A room, oftentimes for me, is all men, all white men.
Wow.
And that can be difficult. And feeling like you belong there, you have something to contribute. So, and you get that little guy on your shoulder that's saying, do you really have information they need? Do you really deserve these accolades? I mean, that can, if you don't, one of the ladies named that little fella Chester, and I thought that was really interesting. So I've named my guy Chester.
You've named him Chester.
Chester.
So, and Chester is full of lies.
Yes,
is that right?
He is.
And
He's
Chester,
deceitful.
He's deceitful and
Yes.
tries to tell you who you are, which
Yes.
is not who you are.
That's correct.
Really, he tries to make you a victim.
That's right. That's right.
And you have to call it out.
Yeah.
And say,
And we're
no.
not victims. We're victorious.
That's right.
That's right.
exactly right.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I love the idea of naming the imposter that is there trying
That's
to get
right.
you to be who you're not, because that gives some tangible kinds of ways to deal with it. You know, God, get this Chester off my shoulder.
That's
Remind
correct.
me of who I am, kind of thing, right?
And I would imagine that men sometimes probably deal with that, but I think a lot of women do, because, I mean, women tend to feel like they're not doing enough. You're working, you have children, you have husbands first and foremost. You have obviously many of us have our church lives, and we're involved in boards and so many things, and you feel like you're just not doing enough. And so it's easy for Chester to creep in. And so, yeah.
You bring up a very valid point. Men do have, and I'm going to call them, in my world, back in the clinical days, insecurities.
Right.
Everyone has insecurities. Men, their insecurities are a little bit different.
Sure.
They may be centered around ego.
Right.
Or not being assertive enough in their mind, or whatever, not being competitive enough.
Yeah.
But it's insecurity. It's
Right.
driven. And this Chester, for women, it's insecurity. And you're right, women do so many things and multitask. We know that women can do that.
Right.
But many times they believe they're just not quite good enough. So it's still insecurity.
Right.
It's just a different formation of
Right.
that insecurity. But we all
Sure.
have insecurities if we're honest and real. But I love that you have identified what a lot of women, and I hope they're listening, that they allow Chester to tell them who they are.
That's right.
And so help me. I'm just going to probe there just a little bit.
Okay.
How do you get Chester? You're coming into a room of all white men. You know you're not going to be respected. Let's just call it like it is. You're going to have, rightly, wrongly, unfairly. We're not going to just live in all rose-colored glasses. We know that exists. How do you get Chester off your shoulder when you're walking into that type of very intimidating situation?
Well, I'll go back to you pause at the door.
Okay.
And no fear. I have no fear.
I love it.
You walk on in and you make sure you're prepared and have something to say. And you don't have to be the loudest voice in the room.
Yeah.
You've got to exude that confidence, obviously. But when you have something to say, make sure you have something to say that's meaningful, that's impactful.
Now, Crystal, the truth is, everything you've just said is incredibly important. But there's nothing you can say or do to change men or women in a situation.
Right.
You can't change others. So
No.
part of my weakness is I have this expectation that people are going to behave in a certain way, or surely
Right.
they're going to, or that expectation that, they're going to change their behavior. But that's not what this getting Chester off your chest and coming in with no fear, and remember, that's not what this is about. Because the truth is, they're probably not going to change. So it's about you being who you are.
Right.
And not basing your security on their behavior.
Right. Because oftentimes the reason people act the way they do is because they're actually insecure.
That's right.
So
That's right. You nailed it.
and so I know that. And so I can't worry about that. Right. So yeah.
And it's so interesting that as you lead this organization that impacts, how many businesses do you guys lead, or how many do you impact?
Right at 800 members, and so and that doesn't even include the partners that we have in the community. Those, we have leadership programs and things of that nature that people go through, and so very impactful organization. Which is one reason I'm at the chamber, because I did ask God to put me in a place where I could serve that would make a difference in the lives of businesses and other individuals.
You are influencing such a large number of people. What an awesome opportunity that you are involved in and leading and investing in your team, and they're investing in others. I want to ask you about this, if I could. Right now, in my world, what I'm seeing everywhere across the country and beyond is this attrition and retention issue.
Yes.
It's so difficult for companies, large or small, from Fortune 100 to entrepreneur startups, to find, you mentioned it, to find people who want to work first, then to retain them.
Right.
What are you learning from your role at the chamber that people are doing to address this issue of getting people to work, getting people to come and work in an organization and keeping the people you have? Any tidbits about that?
Well, I think we have to understand, first of all, it's not always about money, especially when you become seasoned, and our staff is fairly seasoned. It's about quality of the workplace, and knowing that your opinions and ideas are respected, that you have a voice. And, for me, it's important to know what motivates our team, and respecting them and making sure I say thank you. It's something that we don't do enough of anymore. I'm noticing, but I'm very appreciative of our team and what we do, and I don't ever fail, or try not to fail, to say thank you to them, for a job well done, and they know how much I value them. So
it reminds me, I had a conversation week before last with an executive from a large Fortune 100 international company, and they are struggling with attrition, except for his team, his executive team. He leads a large, he's VP, he leads a large. Anyway, all that to say, he told me, he said, our team members tell me that we're not here because of name the corporation. We're here because of you. Yeah. We're here because you have been investing in us, and we want to work for you. And they have sustained that through isolation when we had to go virtual, and now they're coming back in a hybrid, and they could have gone anywhere. And but as long as, I love what you said, it's not about money. Obviously, it has to be a competitive rate, but there's so many other things, and you have done a beautiful job of listing those for us of what we can do. We forget those things. We default to, oh my goodness, we throw our hands up, we can't afford this, or we have to throw more money at that.
That's right.
And many times it's just about doing these things that you've encouraged us to do today with your team, being about the people. Right. I love it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Crystal, you've done it again. I don't know how. You're amazing. Your insight is, and I told you this earlier before we started this podcast, your insight is rare. We know there's an inverse correlation between rising in leadership and depth a lot of times, or insightfulness. Sometimes it seems that the CEOs and presidents don't want to hear. They only want to hear themselves, and so we lose the ability to hear as we rise. But not you. Not you. You're an exception, and that's so inspirational to me and to so many people. So thank you for that.
Well, Larry, that's important to me. Let me just add one more thing. I was in a conference, and something that disturbed me the other day, I heard someone say that servant leadership is not relevant any longer. I was appalled. I kind of checked out after that, and I subscribed to Matthew 23:11. The greatest among you is serving others, right?
That's right.
And that's me. That's what I wake up and live by every day, and I think that's important. I'm not seeing that as much as I would love to see that, but authentic leaders are serving, and they know that that's what we're called to do. So
I'm going to ask you to leave us with a thought for those aspiring leaders in just a moment. But I have to say to you, thank you for taking that stand, because when servant leadership becomes irrelevant, then I think leadership as a whole becomes irrelevant.
Right.
That really is what effective leadership is all about. It's what defines a true leader, I think. That's amazing. I would be appalled as well.
Yeah.
And I know there are fads and, we got to use this terminology and this jargon. But at the end of the day, it's about serving our people.
That's right.
And caring for our people.
Right.
So these leaders who are listening to you and they're going, wow, I want to be where she is. I want to lead like Crystal. What would you tell them? What are some, just 2 or 3 nuggets that you would say to them? This is what I want to lead with you. Either young, aspire, or people who are just in leadership in general.
Don't be afraid to stretch yourself, to get out of your comfort zone. That's important. Surround yourself with those that I mentioned that are brilliant, that are doing some of the things that you'd like to do. Ask questions. Find good mentors, people that are willing to take you under their wings. I've never come across anyone that wasn't willing to answer questions and help, especially living in the South. I mean, people are always willing to take time and spend time with you if you just ask. Don't be afraid to ask.
That's a good part of our culture, isn't
it? Yeah.
These are awesome. Thank you for this. And if we could just do these things, we would all be better leaders.
Right.
Crystal, as you have talked today, I was just sitting here reflecting. I was thinking, and if we could somehow get your message out, and here's where I'm headed with this. Crystal, have you thought about writing a book?
No, but I tell you a really, really good book. It's called Crossing the Line. And there's an acronym in that book that I love, GRIT, right?
Yes.
Right?
Yes,
right?
yes.
Get over yourself, because I've had to learn to do that. Run to the hard things. Now I'm working on the running, but I'm doing some of the hard things. Running to the hard things, inspiring others, and the taking time, I'm working on that. So
Thank you for that. My goodness.
Everybody needs to get your book.
Well, I hope it will be helpful. If it'll help a few people, then we're doing what we're called to do, right?
Yes, that's right. That's
Crystal,
right.
you're amazing. Thank you for this time.
You are amazing. I appreciate what you do so much, you and your team, and that you do it here in Decatur.
We do.
And abroad, of course, but your
home base is right here.
Your home base is right here.
That's it. Take care, Crystal.
Yeah, thank you.